You run an e-commerce agency that has helped generate millions of dollars in revenue for brands powered primarily by Shopify. You built a personal brand in this industry on LinkedIn, X, which is formerly Twitter, YouTube, and you're building a dance music brand. And you've done all of this after only working in an SEO job for 9 months and then going self-employed 3 years ago. So would you like to introduce yourself? Kai Cromwell, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Yeah, good to be here. Appreciate you having me on. Yeah, I got into SEO. I dropped out of grad school right before, coincidentally, like right before COVID happened. I didn't know COVID was coming, and I dropped out about 2 months before, and I didn't want to pursue that kind of career path anymore. So I had heard about SEO a few months prior. I had a friend do it, and pretty much self-taught on the internet. I mean, blogs, YouTube, anything I get my hands on. Talked my way into a job interview and got a job at a small agency. We were doing local SEO for service-based companies, so like plumbers, carpenters, HVAC, things like that. And about 2 weeks in, my SEO manager, it was a really small agency, so I was the only other SEO person at the company. She quit. And so I went from self-taught a few months ago to now managing a couple $100,000 of SEO retainers across a couple different service companies. So it's a pretty steep learning curve, but it definitely expedited my learning process, which was cool. Yeah. And then company, I didn't really like it. I wanted to kind of do something a little bit more. So about 8 or 9 months later, quit and started consulting, personal brand stuff with like Fortune 5 CEOs, dating coaches, things like that. Service companies as well, in international markets. And then I got into EComm a couple years ago, and that's where I've been since.
Awesome. So what actually made you niche down specifically into Shopify sites? Was it just an opening in the market, or did you have some previous experience working with the platform before?
A little bit of both. Yeah. In college, my sophomore year of university, I launched an EComm brand, like tiny little fashion brand with my roommate, on Shopify, right? I mean, it's like, I think it was back then, it was like $20 a month. It was like super, you could set up a site in 5 minutes, right? It was a no brainer then. And then when I wanted to get e-commerce, just doing like some industry research, every big company had either recently made the switch or was launching on Shopify. And I figured, one, kind of pivoting or positioning myself and our agency as Shopify specific would make brands a lot more comfortable with that. And so far it has panned out that way. A lot of brands like the word Shopify specific. And two, from an internal like operation side of things, it has made it's made things so much easier, right? Like we're not looking for, how to do certain things in different CMSs, right? So, I've done e-com SEO on like WooCommerce, Wix, Squarespace, and it's definitely just simplified things to be on one CMS. So that's quite nice.
So in terms of actually just using Shopify as a platform, a lot of people have complained in the past that Shopify is actually pretty prohibitive in terms of its easiness out of the box for using as a platform for SEO. What have you found is the easiest approach to approaching SEO when you're using Shopify? Is it just have you got a standard plugin that you're using? Have you got standard approaches to using templates? What kind of are you doing on when you're first approaching a campaign for a new Shopify client?
For sure. Yeah. So whenever we onboard a new client, the first thing we do is address any of the technical issues. It really depends on like the age / kind of revenue path of the brand. Usually smaller brands and like anything under like 75 to 100K a month. If they have not worked with an agency before, SEO, freelancer of any kind, usually they haven't taken care of the basic technical out of the box stuff. So like the canonical product URL issue that everyone complains about, index or like indexing tagged pages, things like that. So we take care of those, right? And that's a pretty standard fix. I mean, those are super simple. As far as like theme edits go, I mean, it's kind of a pain depending on the theme to optimize the collection pages, right? Getting that copy both at the top and the bottom of the page. Most brands, prospects, brands we work with, anything like don't optimize collection pages on Shopify. So the fact that we're doing that, and we're having success almost immediately once we make those changes, which is great. But yeah, I think Shopify's come a long way in the last couple of years. Like when I first started, I know it was awful at SEO, and it's still not perfect, but in terms of like the brand perspective, it's, I think, the best CMS in the market from a total ecom perspective. So I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit, right? I think in ecom, if you were to separate like the 3 buckets, technical, on page, and off page, I think technical is probably one of the least important buckets for most e-commerce brands we're working with. So kind of willing to make that sacrifice, I think, just to keep in the Shopify ecosystem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. And I think a lot of clients will benefit from the fact that you guys have got that previous experience, just immediately being able to, like you said, get the quick wins in there. And like I said, I've worked with so many brands that are very, very poorly optimized across the board, let alone their category page. They've still got home pages, the mess title for their home and things like that, right? They haven't got anything optimized for keywords, haven't got content anywhere. So just being able to have any ability is some ability, right?
Right.
In terms of the actual strategy that you've been using for Shopify from an SEO approach over the last 3 years, because that's how long I think you've been operating your agency for this time. I know that there's been quite a lot of I wouldn't necessarily say there's been a lot of change overall in SEO and the approach to SEO, but there's been a lot of talk and a lot of noise about the changes in the SERP, and there has been a lot of intent changes, but I think they have favored e-commerce actually, rather than favoring, the affiliate sites and niche sites that have been getting hit quite a lot. So in the last 3 years, have you yourself made any major changes to your approach with the SEO strategy, or has it stayed pretty flat and pretty similar the entire last 3 years?
I'd say it's been relatively the same. And to your point, yeah, I think it's become, I don't say easier for e-commerce, but it's definitely the SERP changes have benefited e-commerce sites tremendously over the last couple of years, and definitely the last few weeks and months, right? I mean, our sites are still growing over the last few weeks, which has been great with all the updates. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? Optimizing the bottom of the funnel, working upwards from there, and then building links just all on top of that. So, I mean, it's a relatively simple approach, I think, to SEO, and obviously just tailor-made to the brands we work with, right? So, which collections, keywords, whatever they want to go after, and then we're building a strategy around that.
So you just said that you were building links for your clients. I know a lot of agencies are on the kind of cusp of building an internal link building team, or outsourcing to a link building agency, or doing some kind of link building, because at this point it's getting to be such a authority favored algorithm that you kind of have to be building links, right? Yeah. So how much link building are you doing for your clients? I know it's going to be relative to individual niches and things like individual client needs and things, but how much link building on average are you doing for your clients, and how much link building as an agency are you doing for your clients, and what types of links are you building for your clients?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say probably per client, we're spending anywhere between like $1,000 to $4,000 a month on links. And a mix of link building methods. We do like reactive PR, so like Hero, Quoted, Source Bottle, things like that. Whenever we bring a new brand on board, we set them up profile with that, and then obviously pitch on behalf of them for any relevant things. For bigger, like larger clients, we'll launch like PR campaigns with Roxhill Media, things like that. We do a lot of like niche edits, guest posts, things like that, for like the blog content, and then any like PR stuff we're like kind of aiming at the homepage. Internal team for the guest post, niche edits, and the reactive PR. We do work with like an outside provider for the like Roxhill stuff, but looking to bring that in-house at some point down the road. But yeah, that's kind of the mix. It's depending on the budget, like we will mix in different link building methods across the board. We don't just want to only do guest posts for one particular brand, right? So we're mixing in a handful of different things and kind of seeing how they go. So
yeah, make sure the diversity is kind of there to safeguard the from algorithm updates and the competitors and things. I also like that you mentioned Roxhill, because I've actually been using that myself this year, and I only just really started getting to use it, and I think it's absolutely insane in terms of the ability that it gives you to kind of find journalists and things. I think it's probably the best space out there.
Yeah, we landed a ton of links using Roxhill, so I'm pretty bullish on that. I am excited to use that for a lot more clients in the future and other projects down the road. So
yeah, I've only just really started getting a specific VA for Roxhill, so I'm looking forward to seeing what somebody full time can achieve on the platform, because we've only been able to do a couple hours per project recently, and it's actually resulted in some net positive results of dozens of links and things, which is really insane. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what, like I said, a full-time VA can achieve, but also potentially just trialing different types of outreach to journalists, different types of templates, different types of digital PR style content. And we've been using a lot of ideation, which is combining AI with trending topics. We've been using a lot of AI ideation combinations. So we basically get the trending topics from Twitter, from LinkedIn, even from exploding topics like Brian Dean, and then we get something like ChatGPT or Claude to combine those topics with our niche and just spit out a bunch of ideas for ideation around digital PR. And obviously, 99% of them are total garbage, but you get 2 or 3 that are really, really good, and then you build those, reach out to journalists, and it's been absolutely insane with the results we've been able to achieve with it. So, like I said, I think we're both kind of looking forward to the bullishness that we've got on this tool.
Yeah.
So the next question I wanted to ask, which is a bit more business related, and I know that you're active on X, like I said, LinkedIn, YouTube, a few other platforms and things. What has been your biggest source of quality clients?
X and Twitter so far. I think like all but one client I've signed has actually been through X and Twitter. So that's been pretty cool. Yeah, I started about, God, on Twitter probably like 13 or 14 months ago. So it's definitely been a pretty good year, I'd say, in terms of social media growth, which has been cool. The first client I ever signed, I was sending cold emails, but like hyper personalized. So I was just scrolling on Instagram, and I was like, wow, I'm just throwing hours away at Instagram. So every time I saw an ad, I would take a screenshot, and then I was getting like pretty much all of them tailor-made to EComm, CPG brands. I would, at the end of the day or the next morning, depending, take all those screenshots and then literally go to the websites, find the founder's email using like Hunter.io or Apollo, depending whatever I could get it on. And I'd send them like a really hyper-personalized Loom video. And that's just on my first client. And then actually 2 clients I got that way. And then was posting on Twitter alongside that. And then it kind of just all parlayed into growth. So I haven't signed anything from LinkedIn yet. I don't do any outbound yet as of now, but that may change in the future. So yeah, Twitter's been good. Just lots of social proof, tutorials, tactics, things like that. That's just been pretty much kind of the spread. 2 to 3 tweets a day consistently for the last year and some change. So
Have you been releasing any case studies as well? Do you know how beneficial that's been?
yeah, I had a couple, like the first case study I ever produced from a client I signed from the client I got from cold email. I signed my very next client. And then I had a series of really solid case studies from the first client I ever signed, and then the second client I ever signed, the agency. And that kind of parlayed into like 4 or 5 clients in the span of about 45 days. And then those have just been kind of cooking in like new warm leads since. So yeah, the agency, like I was freelancing for 2 years. So the agency is only about 13 months old. Like I started Twitter about the same time I started the agency. So I was just like kind of freelancing around different e-com brands and B2B companies and whatnot. So the agency though is just about a year old.
It definitely probably brings some stability with the agency because you get obviously the recurring client contracts and that kind of things. And stuff.
Yeah. Oh my God. Freelancing was a nightmare. Yeah. Just like having to chase clients. And also I just think from a business owner perspective, like when a company's working with an agency, they don't feel like they can kind of drag a freelancer around, so definitely helps kind of to prop up a business behind you, which is nice.
Yeah. The power dynamic is a bit different with a freelancer versus agency.
Totally different. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you said that in that part that you'd managed to sign 4 or 5 clients in the space of about 45 days, so a month and a half or so. What do you think you've improved on your sales process over the last few months or even years?
Yeah. So when I first started SEO, freelancing, anything like that, I had no idea how a sales call looked like. I was freelancing with a partner at the time, and he had done SEO back in like the early 2000s, and it kind of just had some legacy clients hanging around. And so, because I was kind of training with him / under him, I was learning the ropes from him, but I was also learning his sales tactics, which maybe worked in the early 2000s. I have no idea how sales has evolved then. But more or less, like we would show up to calls with like full pitch decks, and we weren't doing any discovery at all, right? And so once I started to get in the agency space, I was like, well, these brands don't even feel like a good fit for me. And I was pitching them and they weren't listening. And of course they weren't listening because I wasn't listening to them, right? Like I had an agenda, they had an agenda, and we just weren't aligned at all. So it started to become a lot more of a discovery call, listening to their problems, figuring out if we could even help them out, right? Like what they were dealing with, what their revenue looked like, what their goals were, had they done it before, things like that. And then, it's like going through like all these different scripts and whatnot, like sales scripts. And I was just decided to start having conversations, and I would just pull up analytics, Google Analytics, like with our active clients towards the end of the call. And I would just show brands, like how the brands were doing with. And it turns out no matter what you've said on the discovery call, like if you just start showing a bunch of green dashboards with like revenue and numbers, like brands are just like, yeah, let it rip. So, um, yeah, the sales, I think honestly, the sales, among other things, but the sales seems to have been the biggest change that has allowed me to actually grow the agency. Because had I never learned it, I would probably not, I would have probably quit the agency. Like I'd have given up at some point. So learning how to have those conversations and then turn them into clients has been really, really beneficial, and probably one of the biggest skills I've learned in the last 12 months, I would say.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of agency owners that are really highly technically capable SEOs, but they're maybe not so socially inclined and very introverted and things, right? And so they find
Yeah.
sales very, very difficult. So their agency kind of struggled to really take off until they onboarded a proper sales guy or even partnered with somebody who's got a lot of sales experience. And that's when they started really hitting the kind of gas with what they could achieve. So I think there's definitely some room to be said about learning either sales yourself, if that is the case. And I know a lot of people don't particularly want to learn sales, and that's totally fair on them. Or just trying to find somebody that's really good at sales, because, like I said, being an SEO doesn't exactly correlate greatly with being
Totally.
particularly amazing at sales. Right?
Yeah, I think like on the calls, like you just think back to the last like handful of calls I've had, like I don't think anything regarding technical SEO has ever come up. And like they don't care. Like maybe they care about how you do certain things, right? And of course, like some brands are very cognizant about whether you're using AI content or not, or like if you're paying for backlinks or not. And I'm really transparent about how we operate. Like that's one thing I've wanted to kind of set as like a pillar of our agency is transparency. But yeah, I mean, most brands just care about the revenue. Like that's it. And if you can just have a conversation about the revenue, then it's fine. That's how everyone is, like everyone's moving to the same direction, right? Like, but I feel like the conversations about, how you write content and how you build links and all these dev changes, like that's just kind of filler space in the conversation. So
So you mentioned some brands are kind of concerned about using AI content. That was not particular. That was part of my next question, which is, have you been using AI in your work, and to what effect have you been using AI in your work, if you have been at all?
yeah, we use it primarily for like early on when ChatGPT kind of exploded a couple, how many months ago that was, earlier this year, later last year, I don't know. Primarily using it for brief creation, content ideation. We use it. So pretty much you create all our briefs with AI, and we populate like some bullet points in there with ChatGPT integration. So we use like a combination of sheets and some other tools. We use ChatGPT for a lot of Hero, like help a reporter out pitches and quoted pitches, just to kind of like populate the pitch, and then we'll tweak from there with like a VA or myself or the brand, depending on how we're operating. But we're also looking into, like right now, we're using AI for a handful of different automations, looking into for like our internal niche editing and guest post outreach. We don't run a lot of follow-up on those because, in my experience, at least so far, like most people who are going to let you build a link on their site are going to get back to you right away. Like the second or third follow-up is not going to make a huge difference. But I find that our VAs are wasting a lot of time chasing down like the initial responses. So we're looking to set up like an AI follow-up, like pretty much like a built-in follow-up that can kind of manage the, I guess you want to call it like a ticket for a backlink, like from the initial response to the time it's getting built. So that'll be a combination of like managing the AI through email and then also relaying it through a ticket in Slack or Airtable or something like that.
Okay, so you have got a proper tool stack that's all integrated across the workflow and things. That's a lot
Yeah,
more to say than most agencies, to be honest, that I've
yeah,
kind of
it's
looked
it's
into.
getting there. It's getting there. We've been working with an operations team the last few months, and it's definitely opened my eyes to that. I mean, it's the same thing as sales, right? Like I knew how to do SEO, but I didn't know how to sell. Same as I didn't really know how to do operations all that well. And now all the pieces are coming together, and it's making things go so much better than they have been. So that's good.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about just sitting down and learning more about the business that you're running rather than trying to learn about the
Absolutely.
service that you're selling, right? And
Absolutely.
and and I think that there's a lot to be said about the SEO world, especially that so many people just sit in this SEO bubble and that they don't actually learn about the greater landscape. And I think that's a lot of the sales issues that people have, is that they're trying to sell SEO rather than trying to sell results from SEO, right? Which makes it so much easier to actually get the client, like you're saying, with a conversion, just showing them the pretty green graphs you've been able to get for everybody else. That's ideal. So for my last question, I just wanted to, it's kind of a 2-in-1 question, and it's quite a difficult 2-in-1 question. What do you see in the future of e-commerce itself? And what do you see in the future for SEO for e-commerce?
Oh, for e-commerce as a whole industry, that is a tough one. I think it's a lot of e-com brands have been having a lot of good runs on TikTok. I've seen some stuff in the news lately though about how TikTok's like just hemorrhaging money all the time. So like, who knows how long that's going to be a channel left. I do think a lot of brands are going omni-channel way too soon. And I think they're spreading themselves far too thin across a handful of channels. I think a lot of brands can get to like several million a month on just like, let's say 3 or 4 channels, and they're trying to go 10 different channels. So I think you'll see a lot of brands come up that are focusing on just a handful of ones. And I think, you're going to see smaller, more lean teams, and you're going to see a lot more products being like, the focus will shift to the quality of the products, not just like how much of them you can sell, right? As far as e-com for SEO or e-commerce SEO, I don't know. I think, link building is going to become even more important. I think I said earlier, like I'm pretty bullish on the PR campaigns. I think those kinds of links are going to have far more weight than anything. I've even noticed in the last few months, like guest posting has just been really not great for most of our brands. Like we only link guest posts to like newly published blogs to get them going, and we have to prop them up with tiered links. But even then, I'm not seeing the same kind of results we were seeing even a year or like 18 months ago. So moving into like niche edits to get some early, like some instant wins from those. And then also the PR campaigns. I think content is going to be, I don't know what's going to happen with content exactly, but there's just so many brands publishing bad content at scale, and not necessarily like you could fix bad content with good links, I think, but it's just having this conversation earlier today, right? Like if you can get to the #1 spot in Google with the blog content, great, right? But the goal is to end up converting as well. And if you're just propping it up with links to get it to the 1 spot and it's not converting, then it's not really serving the same purpose. So kind of finding a blend between SEO and brand style and like conversion focused style. But links are going to continue to be, I think, the separating factor among brands.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. I think with the rise of AI content as well, I think content's going to become less of a signal, and it already has becoming devalued over time with Google, especially even recently allowing more cannibalization into search and things like that. I think that it's just proof that Google is devaluing content, like you said, and that links will become more important. So I appreciate you being on the show, and I think that a lot of people have got a lot of insights into this, and that there's a lot of agency owners that are probably, even not at the beginning of their career, but probably just struggling with their business and looking at operations, that are going to get a lot out of this. So I appreciate you coming on. Is there anywhere that people can find you online?
Yeah, Twitter, my handle is just at Kai Cromwell, or X at Kai Cromwell. LinkedIn's the same. Yeah, that's where to find me. And I appreciate you having me on. Been a pleasure. So thank you.
Awesome. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.